Yes, I am here for the Life of Chuck trailer, please. Oh, guess not. Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I'm known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a bit of palaver on a very special hail to Stephen King. That's right, and so for anybody who might be stumbling upon this trailer reaction, Stephen King is, as you can see by that tower of tomes behind me, my favorite author, rockin' Father Callahan right here. And yeah guys, so The Life of Chuck. This is a novella that was originally released in this baby, If It Bleeds, and so, you know, while I enjoyed well enough the other three stories, which was, Mr. Harrigan's Phone, and then you had Rat, which they said at one point they were going to be making into a Netflix movie. I believe Ben Stiller was trying to develop it, had acquired the rights. Harrigan's Phone ended up actually being turned into a film, also on Netflix, by the way. If It Bleeds, the title story, which was another Holly Gibney tale, one of the many at this particular point, which I enjoyed well enough. It is the namesake and the centerpiece, so to speak, but the standout by a large margin. We're talking like ginormous status, enormous in every possible capacity, and cut me to the core in a lot of ways was The Life of Chuck. It's the second story in this collection of novellas, and so I think one of the reasons why it hit me so profoundly, timing had something to do with it, because this book was released right at the onset of the pandemic. I think it was just a couple months in when it was released. Pardon me. And so the book begins with some stuff that hit very close to home. And I think for that reason, I still remember speaking with some of the people on my Tale to Stephen King Facebook group that's been going throughout the 300 plus episodes of the show, most of which were on the Horror Show channel. Now since I went over to Arizona State, they've migrated over here to Enfuegotainment. But long story short, we were having palaver about how this story was just like bone chilling, and not because it's like the scariest story, but it was just certain, the way King starts this story out was just right place, right time to really just cut you to the core. It's told, without spoiling anything obviously, in 3 different segments, and yeah, it's 3 profound parts, and I'm not going to give any, you know, details about anything beyond that, but so love this story. It's about Charles Krantz, and you know, Chuck obviously is a odd nickname I've always found for the word Charles. I think that goes back to generations before mine, obviously. But yeah, so he is our lead character. He is the title namesake and all that jazz. And so when I heard that the incomparable Mike Flanagan, who is really, I mean, he's trying to make The Dark Tower right now as a series, thank God, as opposed to the odd amalgamation film that we had, which is just so infuriating for me because it just felt not even half-assed, quarter-assed, and that, you know, Nicola, he just didn't, Arcel didn't really understand the material very well, but that's for another day. Anyway, Flanagan has been at the just helm of some of the best Stephen King adaptations ever. I mean, we're talking Gerald's Game, obviously, Dr. Sleep, which was beautiful. I mean, another one that comes to mind, the best non-Stephen King thing he ever did, which is Midnight Mass. He tried to make Revival, which was such a bummer because Revival is incredible, and you know, who knows if we'll ever get to see that adapted. But Life of Chuck, the fact that it's a story that also spoke to him so deeply, you know, as it did with myself and various other constant readers. And so he's like, I'm going to make that. And it's obscure enough that I think I could make it outside of the studio system. I could get a lot of people on board based on the clout that I have started, just has attained through so many profound projects like The Haunting of Hill House. You know, he did the, more recently, the House of Usher show, Fall of the House of Usher. And so, I mean, his resume just keeps building. He's working on that new Exorcist now after they were like, peace out, cut it out, David Gordon Green. Yeah, so the cast that he has assembled for this film is incredible. I mean, you got Luke Skywalker himself in this, man. Mark Hamill, who was in the Usher show. And then you've got Chiwetel Ejiofor. You have Karen Gillan, his wife Kate Siegel, who's in so many of his projects. You have Jacob Tremblay, who was in Dr. Sleep. You've got in a very, very memorable role in that, as short as it was. And I mean, and aside from the many other names that I'm not going to have enough time to mention, in the lead role as Chuck, have Tom Hiddleston, Loki himself, everybody. And so I have been so beyond stoked about this film. Yeah, and Neon, who were the ones who acquired it after it won, I believe it was the jury prize or the audience prize, I'm trying to remember, at TIFF where it debuted. It was essentially like, that is the highest honor at the Toronto International Film Festival that they give out. And so it took a lot of people off guard because they thought, if I remember correctly, everybody thought it was going to go to like The Brutalist, or there was one other, you know, just very esteemed with a pedigree, you know, one that you know, premiered there and everybody thought it was going to get it. And I know I'm long-winded. I'm going to, you know, tell people if they're sticking around this long that I'm going to get to this trailer shortly. Yeah, guys. It has Neon behind it. They just put out The Monkey back in February. They just won another Academy Award for Best Picture with Anora, which I wasn't a big fan of, but you know, that's my art is subjective. It's my own opinion there. They previously won a Best Picture for Parasite, Bong Joon-ho's film, and check out Mickey 17 on a side note if you haven't had the opportunity, because that flick kicks ass. It was really enjoyable, and you know, Pattinson is terrific in the lead, the dueling lead role, I should say. But in any event, today we finally got our first trailer for this film. I believe it is arriving June 6th, if I recall correctly. The trailer is going to confirm that information for us. So I was on the fence about doing this until I just couldn't bear waiting, and yeah, it's spring break, so I have the opportunity from Arizona State's Film and Media Studies program to actually not be entrenched in schoolwork and just jump right into this, as everybody loves to say. It's a cliche thing to say, but yes, let's do that proverbial thing. And yeah, I guess I'll give a disclaimer at the very, very beginning of this, but yeah, let's check out. It's only a minute or so, a little over a minute from what I can see, Life of Chuck. Here we go, Neon. And the first poster is like very psychedelic looking and ties in with a lot of the themes of this film. Your hand in mine. The Grand Mind, El Rey. I'm curious how much of the story this is going to give away. Probably not that much, which I will be happy about. Yep. Of course they go to all of his more dramatic stuff, because this is not full-blown horror, everybody. There's our man. I have a feeling what he's gonna do. Yep. There he is. There's Tremblay. Yeah, look at this cast. I forgot Lillard's in it. David Dastmalchian too. Yeah, they just keep coming and coming.
The universe is large, and it contains multitudes, but it also contains me.
Start dancing. Well, it's about as vague as I was expecting it to be, which is one of the reasons why I was like, should I wait for a full trailer or, you know, do the teaser thing? In any event, I will, honestly, this isn't even one that I necessarily feel like backing up, man. And I know if you have a more substantial trailer, that's the thing. It looks gorgeously shot, as I would expect. And just to remind everybody, as I said a little while ago, this was made outside of the studio system. So it's not like, you know, Flanagan had some backing already. He had to find his funding and, you know, get all that together and then make this. You know, he was able to, I believe, get some exceptions because he wasn't filming for a major studio. So a lot of this was shot during the pandemic, if not all of it, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, it gives that very dreamlike feeling. There's definitely some hints, as you saw with you know, the little heart monitor and everything, and you have just that great little bit of dialogue, you know about how vast the universe is, but I'm in it too. So I always think of one of my favorite songs from Nevermore, Rest Peacefully, We're Ordained, but just a speck in the spectrum, insignificant am I, but yet there is a lot of significance to every individual and just a nuance, and to use those cliches like, you know, you are a unique snowflake. You're not like anybody else. You know, you may have a lot of similarities from the experiences we soak up from interacting with other people, whether it's directly or through their art, whatever it may be. But this is a story that really, really spoke to me on the printed page. There is, in my estimation, based on just the heart and conviction that so much of Mike Flanagan's work embodies, there is no better person to adapt this, at least for me. Somebody who understands King's work, but yet also has such a deep sentimentality to him, because this story embodies that. I don't even feel like going into the synopsis necessarily, because I'm curious if they're gonna retain the structuring of the novella, because it is a little unconventional, at least. But as you guys saw, that cast, my goodness, it's a very special thing going down with this. And yeah, June 6th, man, it says summer there, but I'm just double looking here, and I believe it is, yeah, let's double it down. I hate doing this on the air, of Chuck, because I believe it was originally supposed to be on May 31st, and then losing ratings, Fuego. Okay, so they're saying the initial release when it debuted, so September of, yeah, so it was September of 2024 when it first hit TIFF, and yeah, the Wikipedia, who knows all, let's just jump to that. Yep, June 6th. Okay, so I just didn't want to look like a goofer there. But guys, I don't necessarily know if I would recommend reading this before, because I'm one of those that you go in with the burden of expectation of wanting things to be identical. I think that much like what he did with Dr. Sleep, Flanagan's going to add some of his own personal touch and nuance to the proceedings here. I think it's going to maintain the spirit of it, but what is the point of a direct carbon copy? I mean, you want to be on your toes just a little bit, and I just love going back to, especially King stuff, because film and cinema in general is just it's visual storytelling, you know, and King is very descriptive with, you know, describing not just areas, but I mean, descriptive as far as like the internal monologue of characters a lot of the time, and, you know, yeah, so for that reason, I always like to read King stuff after watching an adaptation if I have the opportunity. That won't be the case here, obviously, but yeah, I am beyond excited for this. Neon on a roll. They are challenging A24, obviously, for, yeah, the, I guess, cinephile dominance as far as like the new wave of, you know, more indie and unconventional things and whatnot. I guess some spring cleaning, since the, well, it's not quite spring yet, but since the trailer was so short, and I'm not going to say uneventful because I'm incredibly excited for it. Like the poster for this, which I'm going to use in the thumbnail, is just, it's beautiful and cosmic, and just gives you this, the vibes when that shot that opened up the trailer when you're just looking at the stars and everything. But yeah, just announced the other day that Netflix apparently wants to remake Cujo. I have misgivings about that. Now, the 83 film most definitely streamlined the proceedings significantly. I just reread Cujo last year for the first time in a little while, because I was, you know, just out of personal curiosity. I did a class at Arizona State which was called The Literature of Stephen King, and I'm like, well, I know all of this stuff. I've read every single one of these books, all the unreleased things, not to be all like, but yeah, I have. And so, and multiple times over at this particular point. That was a journey I started of reading everything in its published order many, many years ago. And so, yeah, I wanted to see someone else's perspective and what they decided to focus on, because in just a semester, what books would be chosen, and Cujo was one of them, interestingly enough, a book that Sai King claims that he doesn't even remember writing, but he had a lot more brilliance than I remember. And now I did recall everything about, you know, we get, you know, chapters, but it's not, doesn't even have chapters. We get portions, we get segments, you know, written from the perspective of Cujo. And there's this movie called, I think, Man's Best Friend, something like that, that just debuted at South by Southwest. That is kind of a horror thriller, that is told entirely from the perspective of the dog, and it's getting some very hot buzz, and I can't wait to see it. I've heard it's heartbreaking. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, those chapters or portions, blah, told from Cujo's perspective, especially as his mental faculties after the bat bites him are like eroding. It is really sad because there is like the internal battle at times, especially like, you know, when he sees certain people that he recognizes and whatever. But I believe it's the Canby family, if I remember, Cambry. Anyway, the family that owns Cujo, there is a big subplot with the mother and the son who owned Cujo going off on this trip to visit her sister, if I remember correctly. And so that is kind of a domino effect, almost like spiderweb of sorts, that significantly contributes to the mother and son that are trapped in the car not getting a prompt rescue. So I mean, there is a lot, and there's also stuff with the father and, you know, his business doings and whatnot. So I mean, it's all really intriguing stuff that enriches the story significantly. You get those chapters told from the asshole who the mom of the kid who, well, he survives in the movie. But yeah, she's having an affair with this guy, and you get, you know, chapters told from his perspective. You get more about the whole cereal industry and, you know, kids spitting up blood from it's actually from the red dye. Anyway, so there is stuff that I think they could add into Cujo, but my biggest worry with a new adaptation of it is that, you know, CGI St. Bernards, you know, like, oh, we're gonna do Clifford, but, you know, we don't have Charles Grodin anymore, and we don't use live animals really, except for very, because, you know, and this isn't a knock on PETA or anything, because unfortunately I saw that video of the German Shepherd and the water and all that stuff, so I know that animals are majorly mistreated on set, but they were so just innovative with how that original 83 film with Dee Wallace was done. You know, they had an actual St. Bernard, they had a guy in a suit as well, but then they also had like animatronics. And so, I mean, I saw that Squires reminding a lot of people about that just the other day on the TwitX, and he was just like, he's like, balls in your corner, Netflix. How are you going to make this unique, different? Are they going to Pet Cemetery it? Are they going to put like the father and, you know, like a daughter in there? I mean, that's the most easy thing to do, right? Gender flip, or, you know, and honestly, I think the racial flip or the gender flip is a lazy way of going about it. You know, make it fit the context. Or just really, I mean, make the story your own. But then again, if you're going to make it that much different than King's stuff, is there really a point? You should call it something else as opposed to grasping for the recognizable IP. I mean, I have such mixed feelings about all this shizzle, guys. It's, yeah, it's really disappointing. We don't have any details about stars, directors, writers, but apparently it's been greenlit. And then again, Netflix greenlit the Duffer Brothers doing The Talisman, and we haven't seen squat about that since it was announced years ago. But then again, we just heard recently that they are actually doing the fairy tale. It's not going to be a movie that I believe Greengrass was attached to it. Now it's going to be a series. But you know, I just really, when I see more concrete things, like we've seen, like The Institute is actually happening. We've seen photographs of like, you know, like stills from the series itself that's coming to MGM Plus later this year. Like we've seen photos of Welcome to Derry, which is coming later this year. We still don't have set release dates for either of those. A girl that I just recently got acquainted with, she's a film friend. She was just at a secret screening that was done in Hollywood for The Long Walk, so it's presumably at least in the test audience stage, and so that's crazy exciting. You know, that's supposedly coming later this year from the Hunger Games director. So, and then also, I mean, the Running Man with Edgar Wright. I've talked about this on Hail to Stephen King various times at this point. That's going to be starring Glenn Powell. So, I mean, yeah, we have actual stars attached. We have like the gears in motion for all of those things. I am still, in some ways, I hope it doesn't end up going through, but I will always see, even though I didn't like the 19 Pet Cemetery, even though you know, I'm not here to beat a red-headed dead horse, but Mike Flanagan is currently working on another Carrie, and we've had 4 carries now. I mean, the Rage Carry 2 just had its 27th anniversary, whatever the heck it is, because I believe that came out in '98. I reviewed that on the horror show for Hail to Stephen King. It was a series I did called Films That Forgot the Face of Their Father. Although I have a soft spot for the Rage Carry 2. It's very of its time, late '90s, you know, teen horror sort of bit, but I liked it. And then obviously the Sissy Spacek original, and then, you know, they tried doing a TV series. They had that pilot that they aired. I'm trying to remember who exactly the prominent dude that was behind it. Was it Fuller? I don't want to double check on the computer right now. And then obviously the Chloe Grace Moretz one, and you know, which I just thought was unnecessary. So Flanagan, what are you gonna do? That's one of the few times where I'm like, what's going on, Flanny? You know, come on, man. What new thing? Because the last we heard of a new carry was that it was going to be about it was going to have some sort of gender altered slant sort of bit to it, but yeah, I'm not going to open up that can of worms because I do remember now what it was supposed to be, and there's such ridiculousness going on in this nation with regards to topics of this nature. Let's just say it was supposed to be a group that is facing persecution and hardship, not that they haven't always already, but you see, that's the thing. I could see using that particular angle, but then again, why does it have to be Carrie is all that I'm saying. So, you know, make it something, you know, unique in its own. Because if you're using Carrie and you're trying to tell that sort of story with that sort of person, you're within the constraints of the King tale, and just like I said, you want to change it, you know, you want to remain faithful. It's a double-edged sword, it's a balancing act, obviously, but, you know, if you go too off the rails, then it's not honoring the source material that much. I mean, then you're kind of turning into that missed TV series on Spike that I really didn't like very much, although I still found some merits at times in that one too. So, I don't know, guys, I have definitely rambled on a long time. I'm going to have to double the title of this from, you know, Let the Chuck trailer reaction, you know, plus, you know, King ketchup of sorts. Oh yeah, and King also announced that in September he's putting out a Hansel and Gretel version with the, Sendek, the guy who did Where the Wild Things Are, exceptional, obviously, very distinctive imagery. There was a stage play of Hansel and Gretel that they were doing, and if you've never seen Gretel and Hansel from our dude who just adapted Stephen King, Osgood Perkins, but you know, I love all of his stuff with the exception of Longlegs, which is, that's where the mixed feelings come in, because Gretel and Hansel and Blackcoat's Daughter and The Monkey was a shit ton of fun if you guys haven't seen that. So, but anyway, so Sendek was working on a version of, he did a lot of concept art for this this Hansel and Gretel that was, I believe, going to be a stage play. And so they're taking those drawings and they're combining them with King's own prose, kind of doing his own take on it. I have somewhat misgivings about that because, you know, so many people have done that tale. I love Hansel and Gretel. It's one of my favorite of the Grimm tales, but I know those stories like went so much further back into European folklore and were the stories that were told generation after generation, and the Grimm bros were just like the first to actually put it down. Remember that movie where they were like kind of con artists, if I remember correctly? Didn't that have, oh goodness, yeah, the Joker himself, and Heath Ledger, I believe, was in it, maybe? Matt Damon, maybe? Anyway, so I guess as I've thought more about it, especially with the imagery specifically, and, you know, King did, I mean, just look over there at, I hope you can see it in the shot properly, but The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, and also, and, you know, Charlie the Choo-Choo up there. King has done his own original children's books before, but, yeah, I don't know, guys, so that's coming in September, so we do, and obviously Never Flinch, I'm not going to talk anymore about that, that's arriving in May. King's Sorrow from the Son of the King coming in October, so this is a crazy year, I'd say the wildest as far as just this sheer amount of releases and adjacent releases like King's Sorrow from Joe Hill that we've had since maybe 2019, which was a very fitting year, obviously, as any Tower junkies like myself will know. But, I mean, 17 was the Return of the King, as I called it, when, you know, it came out, and you had 1922. I mean, there was so much great stuff that year. So, very long story short, I am stoked as all hell for Life of Chuck. I cannot wait to see this film. And, yeah, guys, there is a lot of other things going on, a lot of King cooking. So, I extend a grande gracias. I've been Jaime Enfuego. You can find me on all social media sectors. All of them at this point. Twitter, X, Instagram, Facebook, obviously here on YouTube. I've got Threads. I've got a TikTok that I sometimes put little brief movie reviews of on. I set up a Blue Sky, but I'm kind of averse to socials. It's really happened over these couple years of being back in Arizona State, but when there's something that I'd say Twitter X is where I am most active, but that's mostly sharing news stories that I find intriguing. Sometimes I'll throw a picture of one of my cats up on the Instas, you know, but yeah, that's about it. I've got a lot more important things I could read and do than scroll. So anyway, guys, I've been Fuego. Y'all have been Rad Status, and until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, cinemigos, constant readers and viewers alike, say thank you. I hope we have been well met, and we share more of this palaver sooner. Supposed to graduate in May, we'll see, rather than later. And until then, remember to shout out to Cecil. I'm seeing you this weekend, buddy. Stay scared and read Stephen King. I mean, yeah, I guess you could read like Chuck before, but I don't know if I want it to be spoiled for you.